Karen, keep the deposit envelope sealed.
That deposit is going back where it belongs.
You put money back before anyone confronted you.
Karen McGinnis operated without oversight for nearly 2 years as the elected tax collector for Fairview Township, Pennsylvania. Over $400,000 in property tax payments passed through her hands. Not one person checked where it went.
Because I was correcting the accounts.
You were backfilling public tax money after writing checks to yourself.
I thought if I caught it up, no one would get hurt.
She would not get the chance to explain. Within 72 hours, IRS Criminal Investigation agents would seize every bank record, every deposit slip, and every canceled check she had written to herself from the accounts she alone controlled. 142 checks, more than $400,000 in property tax payments. Money owed to the Crestwood School District, to Luzerne County, and to the small Pennsylvania township that had elected her 3 times to be exactly who she said she was. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Have you ever really thought about how much of your local government runs on nothing but trust in one single person? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. If this is your first video, hit that subscribe button now. We cover small-town accountability cases like this one every single week, and I promise you this story only gets worse the deeper we go. Karen McGinnis was born in 1978 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, the middle daughter of a coal region family that had never once left Luzerne County. Her father worked 41 years as a maintenance supervisor at the Mountaintop Industrial Park. Her mother clerked part-time at the local credit union and ran the concession stand at the Crestwood football games on Friday nights. They lived in a 2-story vinyl-sided house on a quiet street in Mountaintop, 3 miles from the school district office where Karen's tax bills would eventually vanish. She was the reliable one. Teachers at Crestwood High School described her in yearbook advisor notes as organized, conscientious, and always the one keeping track of the money for class trips and prom. She played clarinet in the marching band. She worked summer shifts as a cashier at the Boyer's grocery store on Route 309. When she graduated in 1996, she was voted most dependable by her classmates, a title her mother framed and hung in the hallway of the family home, where it remained until the day the agents came knocking. She enrolled at Luzerne County Community College and earned an associate's degree in business administration in 1998. Her first full-time job was as a bookkeeper at a small heating oil company in Mountaintop, where she stayed for 11 years. Her employer would later tell investigators she was meticulous, punctual, and the kind of person you didn't have to check behind. She was making $34,000 a year when she left in 2009 to take a job as an office manager at a family-owned dental practice on Church Road. In 2001, she married Stephen McGinnis, a diesel mechanic she had dated since her junior year of high school. They bought a modest 3-bedroom ranch on Wildflower Drive in 2004 for $147,000. They had 2 children, a son in 2005 and a daughter in 2008. On weekends, Karen coached her daughter's t-ball team and served on the Crestwood Elementary School's parent-teacher organization. She organized the annual holiday craft fair. She ran the Cub Scout popcorn fundraiser for her son's pack. She was, by every account, exactly the kind of person a small Pennsylvania township notices and remembers. In 2018, the incumbent tax collector for Fairview Township announced she would not seek re-election. A neighbor mentioned the opening to Karen at a school board meeting. Karen thought about it for 2 weeks, talked it over with Stephen at the kitchen table, and filed her paperwork on the last day of the deadline. She ran unopposed. She was elected in November with 1,047 votes and sworn in on the first Monday of January 2019 at the Fairview Township Municipal Building, her 10-year-old daughter holding the family Bible. Her salary was modest. The Fairview tax collector position paid a per-parcel commission that, in a good year, worked out to roughly $28,000. It was not a full-time job. It was, in the language of small Pennsylvania municipalities, a part-time elected office of public trust. She kept her bookkeeping work at the dental practice. She ran the tax office out of a converted spare bedroom in her home. For 4 years, she did the job well. She won re-election in 2021 with even more votes than the first time. Her neighbors called her a godsend. To understand what Karen McGinnis did, you have to understand what a Pennsylvania Township tax collector actually is, because it is not what someone from outside the state would assume. In 48 of the 50 United States, property tax collection is a centralized function handled by county employees under layers of oversight. Pennsylvania is one of the two exceptions. In Pennsylvania, every township, borough, and second-class city elects its own tax collector. An individual person, running individually, accountable individually, holding the money individually. It is one of the oldest surviving artifacts of colonial-era local government still operating in modern America. And in a township of 5,000 people, it is a job almost nobody thinks about until something goes wrong. Fairview Township has roughly 5,200 residents. It sits on the ridge above Mountain Top, bordered by state game lands and the Nescopec State Park. It has one municipal building, one police officer on duty at a time, and a 5-member board of supervisors that meets on the second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. in a low-ceilinged room with folding metal chairs and a printed agenda posted on the door. Every year, 3 separate taxing authorities send Karen McGinnis their tax bills to collect: the township itself, Luzerne County, and the Crestwood School District. Residents mailed their checks, dropped them off at her home office window, or handed them across the counter at the municipal building on the 2 Saturdays a month she held office hours. She deposited those checks into 3 separate bank accounts she maintained at a local branch of a regional bank on South Mountain Boulevard. And then, roughly once a month, she was supposed to write disbursement checks from those accounts to the county treasurer, the school district business office, and the township supervisors. That was it. That was the entire process. One person, 3 accounts, 3 checks a month, no cosigner, no second set of eyes, no audit until the annual reconciliation. The township supervisors approved her surety bond every January, a $50,000 policy, which is what Pennsylvania law required, and which by the end would be laughably inadequate for what she had actually taken. The State Auditor General's office is technically responsible for auditing local tax collectors. In practice, that office audits roughly 1 Pennsylvania municipality every 7 to 9 years on a rotating schedule. Fairview Township had last been audited in 2017. Karen McGinnis knew that. Everyone in the office knew that. The bank sent monthly statements to the address of record. That address was her home. She opened her own mail. She reconciled her own accounts. She signed her own checks. She was, in every operational sense, the entire financial control structure of a small Pennsylvania township's tax collection function. No one noticed, no one checked, because no one had ever needed to. The first check she wrote to herself is dated March 14th, 2023. It was drawn on the Crestwood School District tax collection account. The payee line read, in her own handwriting, Karen McGinnis. The memo line was blank. The amount was $2,400. Investigators would later reconstruct what she was doing that week. She had lost approximately $3,100 on a single online casino site the previous weekend, playing a game called Buffalo Blitz between 11 at night and 3 in the morning while her family slept upstairs. Her personal checking account was overdrawn by $400. Her Discover card was 2 payments behind, and sitting in the school district tax account, at that moment, was $187,000 in recently deposited property tax payments from Fairview Township residents. She cashed the check at the same branch where the account was held. The teller did not ask a question. She had no reason to. Karen McGinnis was the account holder, the account signatory, and the elected tax collector for the municipality that owned the funds. From the bank's perspective, the transaction was routine. It looked, from every angle, like normal municipal business. 2 weeks later, she wrote a second check. This one was for $1,800. Then a third for $3,200. Then a fourth for $2,500. By July 2023, she was writing checks to herself roughly every 10 days. The amounts crept upward. What had started at $2,000 and $3,000 became $4,000, then $6,000. Then, in one case, in October 2023, $11,500 in a single check. She wrote the checks at her kitchen table, from the same checkbook she used to pay the township's utility bills. She recorded nothing in the register. She kept no parallel ledger. She simply wrote the check, drove to the bank, and deposited the money into her personal account, or took it in cash. The online gambling escalated in lockstep with the theft. Federal investigators would later subpoena her account records from 4 separate offshore-facing online casino platforms. The transaction log showed a woman playing digital slot machines and video blackjack for 6, 7, 8 hours at a stretch, often between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., often on weeknights, always alone. The losses were staggering. In a single month in the fall of 2023, she deposited $34,000 into gambling accounts and withdrew approximately $1,200 in winnings. Her husband did not know. Her children did not know. Her mother, who called her twice a week, did not know. She kept her laptop in her tax collector office and locked the door when she was working. She told her family she was catching up on township paperwork. She was, in a sense, telling the truth. The paperwork she was catching up on was the paperwork of hiding what she had already done. The signs were there. The tax office phone had started going to voicemail more often. Residents complained on the Fairview Township Facebook group that they could not get in-person office hours as reliably as before. In November 2023, a Crestwood School District accounts payable clerk noticed that Karen's monthly disbursement check to the district had come in $8,400 lower than the running total of deposits reconciled with resident tax bills. The clerk emailed Karen. Karen replied within an hour that the shortfall was a timing issue with a batch of late payments she had not yet processed. The clerk accepted the explanation. Karen made up the difference the following month with a check drawn against still fresher tax deposits, which meant the shortfall did not disappear. It just moved. That is the mechanism that would eventually undo her. The account balances only worked if new tax payments kept arriving. Every disbursement she made to the county, the school district, or the township was being paid, in effect, with the next resident's money. It was a Ponzi structure inside a public account, run by a woman who had never stolen anything in her life until March. And she knew. She wrote 17 checks to herself in October and November of 2023 alone. She wrote 9 more before Christmas. She spent the holiday season at her kitchen table, stamping tax bills for her neighbors, taking their checks with a smile at her office window, and then, hours later, cashing those checks against her own name. By January 2025, she had written 142 checks to herself. The total was $407,088. She had quietly returned about $40,000 in scattered deposits, small apologetic gestures against a hole she could not close. The catalyst was not a tip. It was not a whistleblower. It was arithmetic. On the morning of January 16, 2025, the business manager for the Crestwood School District, a woman named Rebecca Antonelli, sat down to prepare the district's second quarter tax revenue reconciliation. She had been in her position for 19 years. She had reconciled Fairview Township's tax disbursements against parcel-level tax bills every quarter of every one of those years. For the last 3 quarters, her reconciliations had come in slightly short. She had noted the discrepancies each time. Each time, Karen McGinnis had produced an explanation. A batch of late payments, a resident dispute, a check that had bounced and was being resubmitted. Each time, Karen had made up the difference within 30 days. Each time, Rebecca Antonelli had accepted the explanation because Karen was a known quantity, a 2-term elected official, a woman she had shared coffee with at township events for 6 years. But the second quarter of the 2024-2025 tax year was different. When Rebecca Antonelli pulled the parcel-level report for Fairview Township, the shortfall was $63,400. That was not a timing issue. That was more than a quarter of the entire quarterly disbursement. She emailed Karen McGinnis at 9:47 a.m. Karen did not respond that day, or the next. On the third day, Rebecca called the Fairview Township manager, a man named Doug Reinhardt, and asked him to check in with Karen personally. Doug Reinhardt drove to Karen's house on Wildflower Drive that Friday afternoon. He knocked. She answered the door in a bathrobe at 2 in the afternoon. Her eyes were red. She told him she had been sick with the flu for 2 weeks. She promised him the reconciliation would be on his desk by Monday. It was not on his desk by Monday, or the following Monday. By that point, Doug Reinhardt had called an emergency meeting of the township supervisors. The supervisors, in turn, called the Luzerne County District Attorney's office. The DA's office, upon hearing the words property taxes, school district, and possibly 6 figures, called the IRS Criminal Investigation Field Office in Scranton. An IRS special agent named Peter Nowak was assigned the case on January 27, 2025. His first move was a subpoena to the regional bank on South Mountain Boulevard for the complete records of every account bearing the name Fairview Township Tax Collector. The records arrived in a single banker's box on February 4th. Nowak spent 3 days going through them. He did not need a forensic accountant. He did not need a computer analysis. What he had in that box was 142 canceled checks written across 22 months, all drawn on public tax accounts, all payable to a single person, all endorsed by the same hand. That hand was Karen McGinnis. We are about to head into the arrest itself. Before we do, if you have made it this far, you already know this channel does not sugarcoat these stories. Subscribe if you appreciate that. We cover the accountability cases mainstream media does not touch, and the next few minutes are the most damning of this entire case. Peter Nowak spent the next 4 weeks building the case before he ever knocked on Karen McGinnis's door. He wanted every piece of evidence in place. He wanted no ambiguity when the moment came. He pulled her personal bank records. Every deposit she had made across 22 months from the tax collector checks was documented. The amounts, the dates, the branches. He pulled her Discover Card statements, her credit union statements, her joint checking account with her husband. He mapped the flow of money from the tax accounts into her personal accounts into the online gambling platforms. He subpoenaed the offshore-facing casino companies. The transaction records came in on encrypted drives from a payment processor in Curacao. The numbers were, in Nowak's own memo, staggering. Across 22 months, Karen McGinnis had deposited $438,700 into online gambling accounts. She had withdrawn $11,400. The math was unambiguous. The stolen money had not gone into a Cayman Islands account. It had not gone into a boat or a second home. It had gone into video slot machines called Buffalo Blitz and Sweet Bonanza that she played at 3 in the morning at her kitchen table, while her husband slept 40 feet away. He interviewed Rebecca Antonelli at the Crestwood School District office. He interviewed Doug Reinhardt at the Fairview Township building. He interviewed a bank teller at the South Mountain Boulevard branch who remembered Karen coming in at least twice a week for the last year, sometimes more, always cashing checks payable to herself, always polite, always in a hurry to leave. He interviewed Stephen McGinnis, Karen's husband. Stephen sat across the table from Nowak in the Wilkes-Barre Federal Building on March 3, 2025. He was cooperative. He was also visibly unaware. He told Nowak he had thought his wife had been stressed about work. He told Nowak he had noticed she had stopped sleeping in their bed, that she had started sleeping on the couch in the tax office with her laptop open. He told Nowak that he had asked her, 3 weeks earlier, whether they were okay financially, and that she had told him, quote, "We're fine. We're always fine. Please stop asking." Nowak also pulled the surveillance footage from the bank. On the last check she cashed, dated January 8, 2025, the video showed Karen standing at the teller window in a gray winter coat, her hair pulled back, sliding the check across the counter without looking at the teller. The check was for $6,200. The account balance she was drawing against, at that moment, was $6,204. She was cashing tax payments to the last dollar. Nowak drafted the criminal complaint on March 10, 2025. The charge was theft of public funds under 18 U.S.C., paragraph 666, the federal statute that applies when a state or local entity has received more than $10,000 in federal funds in the year of the theft. Both Luzerne County and the Crestwood School District had received tens of millions in federal pandemic and infrastructure funds during the operative period. The jurisdiction was clean. The arrest warrant was signed on March 13, 2025. IRS Criminal Investigation and the Pennsylvania State Police executed it 2 days later. They came to the house on Wildflower Drive at 8:12 a.m. on Saturday, March 15, 2025. Karen was in the kitchen making coffee. Her husband had already left for a fishing trip with his brother on Harvey's Lake. Her children were both asleep upstairs. The knock at the door was, in the words of the body cam audio, firm but not hostile. Karen opened the door in a fleece pullover and jeans. She saw the badges. She said nothing. Agent Nowak identified himself. He identified the other agents. He informed Karen that a federal arrest warrant had been issued for her on charges of theft of public funds. He asked her to step outside. She did. The body cam captured what happened next. Agent Nowak: "Ma'am, do you understand why we're here?" Karen McGinnis, after a long pause: "Yes." Agent Nowak: "Can you tell me why?" Karen McGinnis, another pause: "The tax accounts." Agent Nowak: "Yes, ma'am." Karen McGinnis: "I was going to fix it. I was trying to fix it." Agent Nowak: "Ma'am, I need to advise you of your rights before we go any further." He read her the Miranda warning. She listened. She nodded at the right moments. When he finished, he asked her if she understood. She said yes. He asked her if she wanted to speak with him. She looked at the ground for a long time. She looked up at the house. She looked at the door her children were sleeping behind. And she said, in a voice that the body cam microphone barely picked up, "I need to call my husband." She did not ask for a lawyer. She did not deny anything. She did not run. She stood on her own front porch in a fleece pullover and jeans, hands trembling faintly at her sides, and asked to call her husband. The agents let her make the call from the front step, on speaker, while they stood beside her. She told Stephen, in 7 words, "I'm being arrested. It's about the taxes." He did not answer for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, "I'm coming home." She was in handcuffs by 8:34 a.m. She was arraigned that afternoon at the federal courthouse in Scranton. She was released on her own recognizance the same day. She resigned as tax collector by handwritten letter the following Monday, March 17, 2025. A letter she delivered in person to Doug Reinhardt at the Township building, apologizing without excusing, promising restitution she did not have the money to pay. The indictment came down on May 6, 2025. 1 count of theft of public funds in an amount exceeding $400,000. Her attorney, a Wilkes-Barre defense lawyer named Anthony DeSanto, negotiated a plea agreement over the summer. She pleaded guilty on September 22, 2025. The sentencing memorandum DeSanto filed on her behalf was, by federal standards, unusually candid. It did not deny the theft. It did not minimize the amount. It described a woman who had, in his words, developed an online gambling addiction of catastrophic proportions beginning in the fall of 2022, following what the memo described as a period of profound marital difficulty. It attached psychiatric evaluations. It attached statements from her husband, her pastor, and 2 former co-workers, all of whom described a person who had, in their observation, become someone we did not recognize over the course of 2023 and 2024. The memo asked for probation. It argued that Karen McGinnis was, in every sense, the classic profile of a first-time white-collar offender, driven by addiction rather than greed. The government's response was 31 pages long. It listed every check. It calculated precisely the cumulative harm to residents whose tax bills had been paid, but whose money had been diverted. It quoted the Crestwood School District Superintendent's Victim Impact Statement, which described a district that had been forced to delay a $180,000 boiler replacement at a mountaintop elementary school because of the shortfall Karen McGinnis had created. It quoted the Fairview Township supervisors, who had been forced to raise the millage rate by $500,000 to close the gap. Every homeowner in Fairview Township was paying, in real dollars, for what one woman had done at her kitchen table. Judge Caroline Mihalchik sentenced Karen McGinnis on March 17, 2026, exactly 1 year and 2 days after her arrest. Judge Mihalchik spoke for 11 minutes before pronouncing sentence. She acknowledged the addiction. She acknowledged the cooperation. She acknowledged the guilty plea. Then she said this: Ms. McGinnis, the residents of Fairview Township elected you 3 times. They handed you their money, and they trusted you to move it from their hands to their schools, and their county, and their township. Every time you sat down at your kitchen table and wrote a check to yourself, you looked at the name of the account you were drawing on, and you knew whose money it was. You knew, and you did it anyway. Addiction explains behavior. It does not excuse a breach of public trust of this magnitude. She sentenced Karen McGinnis to 20 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, restitution of $367,088.35, payable to the victims in proportion to their losses, and a bar from seeking public office in Pennsylvania for a minimum of 3 years, a condition Karen had already agreed to as part of her plea. She reported to FPC Alderson in West Virginia on May 4, 2026. She is scheduled for release in January 2028. The Fairview Township tax collector position remains, as of this recording, an elected office. 1 person, 3 accounts, 3 checks a month, no co-signer, no second set of eyes. That story was hard to sit with, but the case right here on your screen is worse. Click it now.